This unknown ride has been abandoned and hidden in plain sight in Disneyland for years. In fact, you've probably sailed right past it and didn't even know its history or the story behind it. But honestly, to truly understand this ride, we need to go back to the 1950s to understand how it even got in the parks in the first place.
This is not Santa's workshop.
Walt Disney was facing serious financial hurdles in securing the funds to open Disneyland. Walt saw his TV as a secret weapon for marketing, so he had an idea to try and partner with TV networks to not only produce content for them, but to also promote his new park straight into the living rooms of American families. CBS and NBC both said no. They didn't want any part with it. So he came to a lesser-known struggling network called ABC, and he pitched them on the idea for a show called Disneyland. They would provide crucial funding for his Disneyland park, and Walt would produce a weekly TV show for them. As a part of the show, he wanted to promote the Frontierland segment of the parks. Almost by dumb luck, they picked Davy Crockett from a list of folk heroes. It ended up being an instant success.
Davy Crockett.
He produced a 3-part series of Davy Crockett, and the second episode alone captivated over half of all TV viewers, and the finale pulled in an astonishing 40 million viewers. But the real magic for Disney is this show sparked a Davy Crockett craze, and it was a gold mine. The show generated an incredible $300 million in Davy Crockett merchandise sales. And in today's dollars, adjusted for inflation, that's around $3 billion. One of the shows in the Davy Crockett series was called Davy Crockett's Keel Boat Race. The episode introduced a character of Mike Fink, the self-proclaimed king of the river. The plot centered around a thrilling race where Davy Crockett's boat, the Bertha May, famously won over Fink's Gullywumper for the title of King of the River. A second episode aired on December 1st called Davy Crockett and the River Pirates. These were so popular, they combined them into a feature film and showed them in theaters, which completely solidified the need for there to be a Davy Crockett keelboat adventure attraction put into the Disney parks. Just a few weeks after the last episode aired, Walt Disney decided it would be a good idea to introduce the actual screen-used boats into the park as a boat ride. On Christmas Day 1955, they debuted as the Mike Fink keelboats in Frontierland, so guests could come to the park and they could actually get on the boats that they just saw on TV. Now, even in today's day and age, that would be incredible if there was a show that took off and you could just go there and take part in it like you were actually on the show. Guests had the unique option to sit either inside the cabin or on the roof, providing varied perspectives as the free-floating boats navigated the waters around Tom Sawyer Island. Something that was very different about the keelboats was that they were actually free-floating. The cast members drove them and could put them anywhere, so the script was kind of loose. The cast members could improvise and make the adventure a little different every time you rode it. Along the journey, guests would have seen various sights, including a Native American tribe, audio animatronic wildlife, but something that guests loved the most was the interaction with the skipper. Much like the Jungle Cruise, they had the ability to tell jokes, and they were often funny. Sometimes the jokes are funny. And while there was a standard script, the skippers were allowed to deviate from it, making the experience very unique for everybody that visited every single time. While the initial draw was that they actually used the screen-used boats, eventually they had to pull them off and completely redo them and replace the hulls with fiberglass. Because the boats were free-floating and not on a track, it really varied what the experience would be like. Passengers never really knew what to expect, depending on the different cast member that they got. Some former cast members recall rough landings and near misses with other boats on the river, and it was all part of the adventure. This required significant skill from the skippers, who had to not only drive the boat and navigate the waters and around all the canoes and the riverboats, they also had to deliver their script at the same time. There's even an acknowledgement from keelboat operators that depending on who you got, some of the cast members remember some skippers rocking the boat from side to side, and then they added it was not really a good idea. The ride was so popular in Disneyland that they actually ended up adding it to Walt Disney World as well as Euro Disney in different forms as well. It was one of guests' most loved attractions until a fateful day in May of 1997 that would change everything. On the afternoon of May 17, 1997, at approximately 5:30 p.m., the Disneyland Gully Wumper Keel boat experienced a critical incident, capsizing into the rivers of America. Eyewitness accounts describe the boat beginning to rock side to side before ultimately tipping over, resulting in dumping a full boatload of passengers into the river. While the incident was dramatic and no doubt frightened everyone involved, it fortunately resulted in only several with minor injuries. A guest who was present on Discovery Island at the time recalled their father actively assisting children and elderly passengers out of the water from the capsized boat. Now, the precise cause of the 1997 event isn't really known. There's different stories that paint different pictures about what actually happened. A former cast member identified as Dan, who was working at Disneyland in 1996, directly attributed the accident to operator misconduct. He said that the cast member was goofing around with the throttle, trying to give it a little extra thrill to the ride. There's another cast member named Steve Josephson who paints a little different picture. He said that the operators involved were his close friends, but the boat was simply overloaded, which was an honest mistake and definitely not deliberate. And no matter what happened, the ride was permanently pulled, and it, or the Bertha May, never made its way back onto the rivers of America again, at least in boat form. The Gully Wumper found a quiet second life at Disneyland. Instead of being scrapped, it was returned to the rivers of America, not as an active ride, but as a silent prop, moored on Tom Sawyer Island. Now, Disneyland left it there for many years, and due to persistent hull damage, it ultimately flooded and sank even as a prop. Disneyland's Rivers of America got a refresh. The burning settler's cabin was reimagined as Mike Fink's cabin, and in front of it, they put the Gully Wumper Keel boat. It mirrored the original one from 1955, except there was no windows and no anything like that, and you wouldn't even know what it was, and it's hidden in plain sight unless you happen to know. But there were two keel boats, and the second one, the Bertha May, well, that's the one that's interesting to me because it found a different life. What does Disney do when they close attractions? They close the Rivers of America, and they designate whether they're going to the storage warehouse for preservation, or sometimes things end up, of all places, on eBay. The Bertha May showed up on Disney's official eBay account and was auctioned off for $15,000 to a private collector that was eventually revealed to be a collector named Richard Kraft. Richard Kraft revealed in an interview with Mice Chat that he had plans to build a lagoon and have the Bertha May as its centerpiece and have it in the water. Those plans never ultimately happened, and in 2018, Richard Kraft actually sold off a lot of his collection at an auction, and the Bertha May was yet again sold and disappeared until a YouTuber named Justin Scared found it again.
All I can say is, would you look at the size of that boat?
But one does remain on the banks of the Rivers of America in Disneyland. So when you sail past the Gully Wumper, imagine the history and what it means for preservation of important cultural items in the Disney Parks community. But for now, there it sits, begging for its story to be told one last time. Just like the story I found of the monorail at Walt Disney World that caught on fire and people had to stand on top of it. You can watch this video on the last screen. I will see you next time, pals.